from that connection, from that dinner, he actually gave us a very generous donation. And I feel as though just those little bits and pieces that I've been able to share on LinkedIn almost perhaps sparked his interest of this work that we're now doing and this way of still staying connected.
Hey, I'm Tania Bhattacharyya, and you are listening to the Campfire Circle podcast. We are all about breaking down the boardroom table as the ultimate space of leadership, and instead replacing it with a campfire. Because that's where we share our stories. That's where we build warm community, and that is where there is always room. I'm building an impactful business in public through thought leadership, and I'm taking you behind the scenes all along the way. So if you want to stand out as you stand up for your mission, you are in the right place. You are in for a treat because Sophie Pyne is joining us on the podcast today to share a case study behind growing her visibility on LinkedIn. She joined us during the last LinkedIn content sprint back in February as she got ready to launch her group program for therapists and to also spread the word about her nonprofit, Waves of Recovery. So this is a perfect conversation for anybody who is LinkedIn curious, who is craving depth of relationship over vanity metrics, and who's ready to build trust, recognition, and community. And if this sounds like you might be interested in the final LinkedIn content sprint that's taking place this June. Registration opens on Tuesday, May 28th, and there's only about 15 spots available. So make sure to jump on the waitlist if you're not already there. And of course, you can find that link in the show notes. I am so grateful and happy to have my dear friend Sophie Pyne with us today, my friend who I have known now for over a decade, I want to say, in many different capacities. And I don't know, the word like reincarnations almost comes to mind for me because Sophie is so many things, from a licensed clinical social worker and a private practice therapist, a sound healer. She is the co-founder of this incredible nonprofit, Waves of Recovery. She is a fellow Pisces, an avid surfer, an ocean lover, and has an amazing group program that teaches healers how to integrate the power of the ocean into their business. And of course, I could keep going. The list goes on and on, but let me just stop here and say, hi, Sophie. Thank you for being here.
Hello. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And I feel like, oh my goodness, when you used the word reincarnation, that really resonated with me because I just celebrated 10 years of sobriety on April 26th. And that's really what connected us in the first place. If I think about my own journey, how we met and what's unfolded. And so yeah, it's really wild to think about, first of all, celebrating 10 years of sobriety and what's unfolded over the last 10 years. And really, what has unfolded is beyond my wildest dreams and not anything I would have thought about when I first got sober. So I guess I can tell you a little bit about my story and where I come from and what's unfolded, what my life looks like today. But I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I went through most of my adolescent and young adult life really struggling with substances, and it brought me to some really dark places. And I say all of that, though, because I feel like I wouldn't be here today if I didn't go through those struggles. And those struggles have really helped me turn them into strengths and realize my purpose and my passion and my power to now be able to do the work that I do today. And so, through this journey of getting sober, going to a women's treatment center when I was a junior in college, coming back to campus, being able to graduate with my master's in social work has really given me this opportunity and this foundation to really be able to give back to other women what I was given and to my community, of course, too. And so when I first got sober, I think the big question comes with, what does my life look like now? What am I going to do? All I really knew was how to drink and use, to the point where it was unhealthy. And so how do I actually live a life that is meaningful, that's purposeful, and that I actually enjoy as well. And so over these past 10 years, I've really had an opportunity to create a life that I really love. And so from graduating with my master's in social work, I worked in the addiction and mental health treatment field for many years. I actually was working more on the business development side, if you will. And I worked at the program that I went to after treatment, which was a college program supporting young adults in finding their own path back into college and how to be a college student and be sober and learn to really thrive. And from there, I also started my own private practice as well. And so was doing some clinical hours on the side. And it was the pandemic. I feel like a lot of people talk about the pandemic and how, yes, it was a really challenging time for a lot of us, something that a lot of us, well, really none of us experienced, right? And it gave me an opportunity to reset. And it was during the pandemic that I almost feel like I had this second rebirth, if you will, where I realized that the work that I was doing, yes, was contributing back to the place that I perhaps had also found my sobriety and learned how to be sober in college. But it got to a point where I felt like I wasn't really fulfilling my purpose in life. And through all of these interesting and wild events that happen in life that sometimes you can't really explain, I actually met my partner of my nonprofit, who is also my fiance now. And I've really created a life that I feel is very authentic to who I am. So I dove back into my private practice. I spent time building my own business. I left the other company. And that was a really scary thing to do. I think for a lot of us, and well, I guess I'll speak for myself too, building yourself up to a place where you have your own business and your own brand and your own story to share can be really scary to step outside and to put yourself out there, really. And so that was something I really worked through during that time about 3 years ago. And I also engaged in other programs and coaching and trainings because I wanted to start adding different modalities into my private practice, into how I was working with the community that were not just traditional talk therapy. And these were all things that really supported me on my own journey of healing and my own journey of recovery, that I thought there's probably something here that if it's resonated with me and if it's something that I practice on the daily or I'm consistent with, it may help other people too. And so over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, I've also done sound healing training. I learned to surf and now have integrated those things into how I work with other people, which really birthed all these other programs that I've created over the last 3 years, including our nonprofit Waves of Recovery, and then now my ocean healing and therapy program. So I really feel like all of these significant points in our life, and maybe they don't even really have to be significant points in life, but I feel like all these different things that were happening in my life, when I really reflect back, it's almost as if they were guiding me to this place that I am today, where there were signs or there were things going on internally that I couldn't really ignore anymore, that I really had to allow them to come to the surface, illuminate them, understand what was happening, and then allow myself to really let life unfold in that way and not necessarily worry about the outcome or try to control what my life looks like versus just allowing myself to flow. And that's the beauty, I think, that I really learned over the last 4 years of starting my own business and starting this nonprofit.
There's so many things I want to say, obviously. That's so good. Well, first of all, before I say anything, I'm so proud of you on your 10-year anniversary. That is such a beautiful birthday to celebrate. And I'm so just happy to see how all of these different pieces of the mosaic of your story have come together to now be very like integrated, very genuine, very authentic. And you do so many different things, but they tie so beautifully together. Like it makes so much sense to me how that silver thread like wraps through everything that you do. And you're bringing in your lived experience, your education, your professional know-how, your relationships, like your influence, your power to really just create healing in so many different ways. And it's incredible to see. And I also want to touch upon the piece about how you said that it can also be really scary. I don't always see that in terms of, I don't see the scary moments. Like it just looks like you're just in flow. But I intimately know how scary it can be to put yourself out there and really share your vulnerabilities. But I know that when you do that, it attracts the right people who are meant to be in your world and your ecosystem. And so I want to ask you a little bit about that process, because for the majority of time that I've known you, we've been able to really stay in touch, not just in person, but like through your Instagram. And I've seen you do sound healing on the beach, and I've seen you do like advocacy in the recovery community or whatever you are doing like on Instagram, and you were very active there. Can you tell me a little bit about your process of like why or how you became LinkedIn curious and decided to
Mm.
show up on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like we have all of these incredible tools nowadays that allows us to put ourselves out there to really connect with communities all over the world, which is really cool. Like technology is great in that way. And when you were just talking about Instagram, it's interesting. I feel like a lot of us on Instagram are showing that highlight reel, like all the beautiful things about life, which yes, there's 100% beautiful things happening in the world. And as you said, and as I said too, there's also this vulnerability and these scary moments and these obstacles that we all have to face in life. And sometimes Instagram doesn't really show that side of life. And I can also, just when I reflect back on sharing on Instagram, normally what I'm sharing is all this like beautiful, positive stuff. But what I notice on Instagram when I do get real and vulnerable, that actually connects way more than all like the pretty stuff. So there's something to be said about being real and authentic. And what sort of attracted me to start exploring LinkedIn was more of this sense of professionalism on LinkedIn. So I've dabbled here and there on LinkedIn since I graduated from my master's. I want to say that's something that I felt like everyone should have a LinkedIn profile. It's professional. Yeah, it's almost like your resume, but on a profile, right? Or that's what I thought it was. And as I started my own business, I realized that a lot of the people that I connect with, for example, on Instagram, are, yes, my community members. Potentially, there's other people or other influencers in my space or other colleagues in my space that are also on Instagram. But it felt more like we're not here perhaps to necessarily make deeper connections. And that's what I found really attractive about LinkedIn was that people who, or this is how I perceive LinkedIn, is people who are going on LinkedIn are perhaps sharing from a place where they're sharing knowledge or they're sharing their beliefs and their values and their opinions about certain subjects or certain areas. I've noticed there's a lot of people on there who also are experts, perhaps in their field, who are sharing research or articles or interesting things that are happening in the world that I probably would never find on Instagram. So I actually found that connecting with people on LinkedIn has helped me to really make connections with more people in my profession or more people who are interested in things like ocean therapy or nature therapy or things like that. It's also led to some, yeah, really beautiful connections of just other clinicians in my area networking in that way. And I find that with LinkedIn, it's not really like you're updating every hour of your life on there. It's you can actually be really thoughtful and really have less of the day to day happening and more of what I love that you call it, you can be lazy on LinkedIn. You can post here and there, and you still are able to make these beautiful connections with people. So I've really enjoyed exploring it. I've really enjoyed connecting with people who I probably would never have found before. And I know from other friends, this hasn't necessarily been my experience, but job opportunities have come from LinkedIn. I know that they've been highlighted for articles they've written. So I think there's just a lot more depth, if you will, to LinkedIn than there is on other social media channels, if you will.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of sharing it. I love how you put that. And for me, and you and I think both, I think are very attracted to depth over reach or going deep versus wide. And so it always has just naturally appealed to me. And I think I haven't really like maybe even put that together. That was why. It's like the opposite of small talk. It's if you're going to be on LinkedIn, you're going to go deep and actually talk about, like you said, your beliefs and your values, or at least that's what I have found maybe does the best or creates those relationships that we want. So in terms of relationships, like you brought up a couple of different ways to be on LinkedIn, and I want to delve deeper into some of those specifically. So let's talk first about your nonprofit, which is Waves of Recovery. You and your fiance have this incredible nonprofit that helps individuals who are in early recovery connect with Mother Ocean, and how beautiful and how incredible it is to be in the water and just experience something so much greater than ourselves, and so tactically as well. And I love your work, but I would love to know, like, how has showing up on LinkedIn, or how has LinkedIn helped you fundraise or maybe reconnect with a relationship that ended up becoming a donor, or just otherwise supported your nonprofit mission?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think something that I'm continuing to explore for sure. But in terms of our nonprofit and our ways of reaching other people, I think by me just sharing about the work that I'm doing, it has helped me to reconnect with other people in the field who perhaps have had no idea that I transitioned out of my previous job and now started Waves of Recovery. And so it's helped us to reconnect with partners in a different way. It's helped us to actually connect and develop relationships where we now provide surf therapy to that treatment center, which has been amazing. It's also helped us to connect with other community members who perhaps are interested in either volunteering or supporting or donating as well. So I think just again, going back to the professionalism side of LinkedIn, it's really helped us to connect with people I feel who are more invested in the quality of work that we're doing and the impact that we're having in our community. So it's also helped us really connect with other surf therapy organizations all over the world, which I think is really incredible because when we think about the use of hashtags as well, it's cool to see it start to grow and see people start to follow that particular hashtag, for example, because we know then that the work that we're doing or the research that we're doing is actually contributing to this greater mission of really elevating surf therapy as an evidence-based practice in the world. So I feel as though it's just, again, going back to the depth side of things, like I feel like it has really deepened my connections with people and helped us to just also raise the awareness in a way that I feel like other platforms perhaps can't do as well. And fingers crossed that we get a big donor from LinkedIn for sure.
That is so good. That is so good. And can you think of any specific examples, Sophie, where maybe like somebody from a previous role or somebody from a previous job was able to reconnect with your work today from LinkedIn?
Yes. So this all actually just happened last month. When I was working in my old role at the previous treatment center that I worked at, we had investors at that organization. And we had kept in touch here and there since I left and since they moved on as well. And randomly, we've kept in touch actually on LinkedIn throughout the last 3 years. And he had reached out to me, I want to say about a year into Waves of Recovery, and just sent me a nice message on LinkedIn saying, really incredible work that you're doing. Would love to learn more. And we were all busy at the time. Of course, life happens. So we didn't reconnect until December of this last year. And I had actually reached out to him and said, I actually might need your help with fundraising. And we didn't end up again talking really until he reached out again in March. And I had randomly been booking a trip to New York to see my brother. And he lives in New York. And I said, oh my goodness, this is so crazy. Again, you know how things just all sort of align. I said, I'm coming to New York in March. I would love to see you. I'd love to share more about Waves of Recovery. I'd love to share about our work. And we actually met in New York about a month ago. And from that connection, from that dinner, he actually gave us a very generous donation. And I feel as though just those little bits and pieces that I've been able to share on LinkedIn almost perhaps sparked his interest of this work that we're now doing in this way of still staying connected. And he's someone that really believes in mental health care and supporting our communities. And so it just all really aligned and has been a beautiful blessing for us too, of just these, again, connections from my other job, but that have also supported us in this way. So yeah, that was really exciting to receive I want to say one of our bigger donations that we've received over the last 2 years.
That's such a perfect story for what happens on LinkedIn because like we started the conversation off by saying people on LinkedIn are not necessarily updating it hour by hour what's happening in their life. Like people, these high-powered investors and movers and shakers and decision makers and people with access to resources are probably checking it like every couple weeks. They're not on there all the time, but if you are consistently showing up and sharing your story and your values and your passions, the people who are like loosely in your ecosystem are going to take notice, especially over time. And I truly believe like when the universe is meant to bring you together, like you happen to be in New York, right? When he reached out, that's not a coincidence. There are no coincidences. And I'm so proud of you, by the way, for
Thank
asking for
you.
this major gift. I know that that can be scary too. And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I think part of it too for me has been having coaches, having advisors, having people in my ecosystem, as you're sharing, that have really been so supportive in my own journey of not only building my business, but then helping us grow. And you're one of those people, by the way. So I really appreciate all of your support. And I think it's so important that we continue to grow and evolve and put ourselves in spaces and places with the people that inspire us, with the people that support us, because that's how we can actually create greater change, is by doing it together versus doing it alone.
That is so right. That is so right. I love this. Okay, so I have another question. So we talked a little bit about Waves of Recovery, but in terms of your group coaching program, your 3-month group coaching program, the Ocean Healing and Therapy program. So you did the last sprint right around the same time that you were launching this program for the second cohort. And I would love to just hear from you, like how was showing up on LinkedIn? Like how did it help you grow that group program?
Yeah. So I absolutely loved the sprint. First of all, I want to say The prompts were so helpful. No, because sometimes you're like writing stuff and you're like, I don't know if this sounds like anyone's going to resonate with it. And I do love writing, but I also feel like I'm someone who just writes and can babble on similar to when I'm talking. It just goes on and there's no stop point. So I really feel like having those prompts helped me to succinctly say what I needed to say and hopefully landed with some people for sure. But yes, it was right around I was doing the launch for the Ocean Healing and Therapy program. And what really helped, I think, was doing the LinkedIn sprint was one, it helped me with consistency of showing up. So it helped me to consistently create posts that were not only engaging, but also asking people questions or asking people to reflect or yes, having conversations with people on LinkedIn with the things that I was sharing. And it also gave me an opportunity to shout out people that I was bringing into the program. So I have masterclass teachers, for example, in OHTP, and I was able to shout out people like Dr. Wallace J. Nichols, the author of Blue Mind, and then he gets to repost it to his community. So I'm really reaching a larger audience as well, which was really great because that also helped me to raise awareness about the work that I am doing through the program and how people can really take what he's written and put it into practice. And I think also just creating this community of people that are, again, really interested in your subject or in your content and becoming an expert in that field. So that was really helpful too, because I did get inquiries for the Ocean Healing and Therapy program through LinkedIn. And I did have a student sign up through really connecting through LinkedIn as well. And so again, I think it was having this consistent message going out. And it wasn't all about join my program. It was more sharing from a way that was authentic, that was real, that was also giving people an opportunity to have a conversation rather than being like super salesy. So that's what I really loved about the LinkedIn sprint was it gave you this template and this journey of bringing people through something that they could understand how this would be helpful in their lives. And and again, it didn't feel salesy at all, which is nobody loves sales necessarily and nobody loves someone who's like pushing you into something. Like it has to feel aligned. And so I do feel like the LinkedIn sprint helped me to get really clear on who am I speaking to as well. I gained new followers just from what I was sharing and what I was posting. And so that's, I think, also really helped me to think about my own strategies going forward.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. That really makes my heart and my soul happy for many reasons. Like one, I love that you're able to grow your business from it, but also I love that you're just showing up in a different way and seeing what can be possible. Because something that you said earlier, which I wanted to comment on, and then I forgot because there's so much I want to talk to you about all the time, is you talking about how this isn't just about growing your business. It's also spreading the good word about surf therapy and like cementing it as an evidence-based practice, which it is, and like sharing the research and reaching those people who are curious about it. Like maybe they know about it, but they don't even know that it's something that they can do, especially because maybe they don't live by the ocean, but your content is educating them and answering these objections and answering their questions in a way that makes them want to ask more questions and get into a relationship with you, which is what I really saw happen as an outsider who is looking in as you shared your posts. You really got a lot of people showing up and asking you deeper questions, which I loved that. I loved seeing that.
It was really fun. And I think, again, it was like people that I probably would have never connected with in any other way, or like, how would they find me? I'm not sure. So it was really lovely to be able to connect on a more professional platform, I think, as well, because when I think about the work that I am sharing and doing today, it is very different from just Instagram and that sort of community. It's really, as you said, more educational and supporting people perhaps in a bigger capacity than other things that I do.
That makes me think of a question around, and maybe you don't have an answer. And if that's the case, that's totally fine. But I'm curious, like, how has writing that batch of content through the sprint, or how has showing up as a thought leader on LinkedIn, like, how has it shaped the ways that you are showing up in the world outside of LinkedIn?
That's a great question. What's interesting, I think we all do, still feel that imposter syndrome because there's definitely people in the field like the author of Blue Mind, Dr. Nichols, who is actually an expert and wrote a book. Sometimes that imposter syndrome creeps in because I'm like, oh my gosh, you are literally like the person that inspired my work and you're talking to me like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I feel so like small compared to you. But it's not true. And that, I think, by defying that, by continuing to show up, by continuing to use my voice, by continuing to share my values, I have noticed perhaps more self confidence that comes from the way that I talk about it with other people. Just more self confidence in the work that I'm doing by having people like him sit in on my master classes and actually share about like how amazing this program is. So I think that by putting ourselves out there, yes, there can be those voices in our head that are like, you're not good enough, or you're not a PhD, or whatever that is. But by being consistent and by continuing to show up in the way that we do, the more confident we're going to feel. I think that just happens the more consistent you are with something. And I think it also helps me to perhaps also become more succinct and more intentional about what it is that I'm sharing. Because there is so much that we can talk about and there is so much that we can share, but it's also starting to figure out what are the things that people do really resonate with? What are the things that are perhaps going to shift and change the way someone else is going to think about something? Or how can this be an opportunity to further educate somebody? So I think also by showing up on LinkedIn, it's helped me to craft my message, craft my elevator pitch, craft all these other ways that I show up in the world because I'm constantly, again, going back to the results, if you will, of thinking what landed with people, what resonated with people, and are those the things perhaps that are going to be helpful in the long run for people to understand and things that I should talk about more. So, yeah, it's been really helpful, I think, for myself to also get over myself. We're all going back again to the lived experience. No one else can tell my story like I do. When
That's
I think
right.
of remembering that piece too, that yes, there's all this research, there's all this evidence, there's all these theories that we can share. But again, when you add the component of your lived experience to that, or the experiences your clients are having, or what you're seeing in the world as a result of utilizing the research and utilizing the theories and all of those things, I think that's what connects for people more.
100%. 10 times out of 10. That is exactly what connects with people. I really love everything you said. It makes so much sense. And it makes me think of the time that I interviewed Denise Brousseau on this podcast. And I talked about like burnout and thought leadership with her. And she really said thought leadership is a relay race. And so in a lot of ways, the gentleman that you mentioned, he's in some ways like passing the baton to you, like you showing up and sharing more about his work just makes both of your missions stronger. And I don't know, I'm just going to keep reflecting on that. I really, really loved what you had to share. So as we wrap up, I always love ending with this question. And I especially love asking my fellow Pisces this question because it's so good. What's your dreamy vision for the future?
Oh, what is my dreamy vision for the future? Wow. I feel like that is a very big question. I have so many big visions and big dreams for the future. And I think when I try my best to answer that question, my hope for the future is that we live in a world where we can all access mental health care, wellness in a way that really resonates with us coming home to our true nature. I truly believe that there is so much in our backyard, in our environment, in our communities that can really support us in becoming the most authentic versions of ourselves. And we've strayed so far away from that. And so my hope is that we can really allow ourselves to find those tools to, first of all, support ourselves, but then be able to support our overall community so that we can live in harmony with one another. So that is my big dreamy vision for the future. I don't know if you want me to be more specific about like myself and my business, but that's my like overarching dream.
Yes, no, that's perfect. That's what I want. That's what I wanted to hear is the big dream, the big vision, because that's what you're working towards in your business. And that's what's driving you forward. But I want to thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciate you sharing your experience with us. And as we close out, I would just love to ask, like, how can the good people find you? How can they get in touch with you? How can they work with you? All of the good things.
All of the things. So for our nonprofit, Waves of Recovery, you can visit www.wavesofrecovery.org. And you can find us on LinkedIn. You can also find us on Instagram at Waves of Recovery INC, Waves of Recovery Inc. And then if you'd like to connect with me, I'm Sophie Pyne. My website is www.sophiepyne.com. You can find all the information about my private practice and then also about my ocean healing and therapy program there. I'm also on LinkedIn and also on Instagram at Ocean Goddess Therapy. So I hope to connect with all of you as well. So thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun chatting with you.
Oh my gosh, of course. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes so you can just easily go there and our readers can connect with you. And I want to thank you again for your time. It was so good to be with you.
So good to be with you too.
Okay, so you've heard from us. Now I want to hear from you. Leaving a review helps us so much in growing our reach and supporting more folks with this podcast. And even better, I would love for you to send me a note on LinkedIn with your takeaways from this episode. I cherish and respond to every message, so I can't wait to hear from you. And if you want to go even deeper, check out the show notes to take your next step.